This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to the March Server Project OCP call. We have a fairly open agenda today, so or fairly empty agenda today, so we should have time to get through everything. I know we got a message from John Leung. He'd like to have a discussion at the end, so we should have time for that, John. Go ahead and get started. Let's see, Elijah, you are on, right? Yes, no. Actually, I don't see Elijah. As we were announced last week, CMAC has left Microsoft to join Google, and since it's a Microsoft position, Elijah Maladi is going to be replacing him as co-lead of the server project. I was going to have her come on and introduce herself a little bit more. We'll go ahead and wait a little bit and see if she joins, and I can do that later on in the meeting. We can go ahead and move over to the OAI-OEM subproject update. I did get a message from Whitney that said she had a conflict today, that they are working on a 2.0 definition, but I don't have any real updates there. So we'll get a good update from her next month, unless anybody on the call has a OEM OAI update for us.
Hi, John.
Oh, Tianya, there you are. You want to say something, Tianya?
Yeah, good morning. So yeah, this is Tianyi. So yeah, right. We didn't have too much update and a presentation update group this week, this month. Currently, each of the work streams are working on each of their agendas and plans, and mainly focusing on the OEM specs details. So we will come back with some details on April. So a quick update. Thank you.
John, before you get on the normal agenda, if you let me, I'll speak just a minute as well. This is Siamak.
Yes, go ahead. I thought about calling you as well, but go ahead.
As John suggested, I'm part of Google now, but I'll be still very much involved with OCP activities. I've learned a lot from all of you guys. We have started a number of projects and sub-projects that are very much on the roll. It would be great if we can combine a number of them to come up with a integrated solution soon. One of the initiatives for OCP for 2021 is in fact integrated solutions. We have started a number of projects, OAI, DCSCM, and these concepts of systems around DCSCM all are moving towards an integrated solution. Other initiatives within OCP going after cloud service models. It will be great to bridge all that gap. So I'll be very much involved trying to pull all this together, and you'll see more activities soon.
Yes, thank you, CMAC. I definitely intended to mention that you're no longer the server project co-lead, but you're definitely still involved in OCP and a lot of the sub-project and initiatives you were working on at your previous company. Good. Damien, OCP 3.0 sub-project update?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Yeah. Still talking about the taller form factor. So yeah, last month we do have more discussion around the taller form factor, and then different companies have provided their simulation and data, how different form factor affect our cooling use cases. So at this time, what we did is we kind of aligned to one form factor on the 70.8 millimeter that we want to get community feedback. And for those in the server mailing list, you should be able to see a survey sent out by myself asking about your feedbacks. And a couple server members already submitted their feedback, including John yourself. So that is the update from mine regarding the taller form factor thermal simulation. From this 17.8 millimeter case tree, based on extrapolation, this is the NVIDIA thing that is not a problem. We will finish up the simulation by in 2 weeks, so that we get confirmation on this area. And how we intend to move forward for this new form factor, it'll be just changing the Z dimension and the faceplate. Very likely the solution for each of the NIC vendor will be a different faceplate, this being pointed here, and also the heatsink. All the rest of the item unchanged if we move between the existing form factor and the small form factor. So it's a relatively easy change for the NIC vendor. However, the downside is there's more inventory to be carried. And then for the, as I mentioned, there's a community survey being sent out. So there are mainly 3 questions that are being asked. First of it is whether you support our recommendation of to include the TOS form factor into the OCP NIC spec. Second one is, do you have plan to implement TOS form factor? And last is a question about the large form factor. Depending on your answers to all these 3, it does have trigger additional questions. Yeah, that will be, but it should take about, I would say 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, you should be able to finish the survey. Yeah, there's the call to action. Yeah, please have to submit your feedback to our surveys. The slide does have some backup on all the thermal simulation that was implemented and also simulated by different companies, but I will not go through that here. Here's basically a summary of this. All these are linked. Any question to me and OCP NIC subgroup?
All right. Thank you, Damien.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Next up, we have a BAPI ODSA subproject update.
Hey, all right, thanks. Okay, so the highlight of our month was easily a spectacular business workshop. So we did DJ and Ravi from Facebook and Rishi from Cadence together, put together a gangbuster workshop to sort of look at the idea of what are the obstacles of business enablement in for a chiplet marketplace. By any measure, I think it was, I don't know if anybody can, I think it was either the largest or one of the largest non-regular OCP workstream workshops. Really good content, 24 speakers from everybody in the semi value chain, where a solid number of people joined and stayed through the whole thing. It was on a Friday morning. And you can find the material here at Open Compute Past Events. We're looking to pick up this whole workshop was kicked off by the business work stream in the ODSA. That's some decent coverage in EE Times. And of course, thanks to ASE and Facebook for sponsoring the event. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to participate in this, please reach out to any of us, me or Ravi at Facebook or DJ. The group, the business workshop work stream meets on Fridays at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Pacific. And then we had some fairly good progress in the Bow test chip. So the idea of building a test chip for the bunch of wires interface is picking up momentum. We're getting some interest from the end users and aggregating their demands. And we're also getting getting interest from semi vendors. We've had presentations by 2 vendors. We're going to have hopefully a presentation by a couple more in developing a test chip. The idea is to either sort of create one joint effort or have one solid, well-funded individual effort to develop a board test chip that will provide resources to the community. Finally, on the our long-running POC, the ODSA POC, we're converging on a storage application, storage use case. Given how successful our business workshop was, we're thinking of a little smaller event, a mini workshop, to kick off interest in a community development for the ODSA POC. Right now, this includes parts from Broadcom, from NXP, Lattice, Samsung, and it's going to be hosted at Supermicro. And finally, we did a couple of talks, one with ODSA content at the IEEE HIR roadmap event in February, and at MEPTech. This should actually be by Ravi Agarwal did a talk at MEPTech, covering some of his ODSA activities. So all in all, a pretty productive month. Thank you. Any questions?
Hey, Baby, yeah, thank you for making great progress in the business side. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Joe. It was, I'm happy to take credit for it. I actually didn't do much on this one.
All right. Well, good. Well, thank you, Bappy, and congratulations on a successful workshop there.
Thank you. I will pass it on to the team. They did a bang-up job.
Good. Next up, we have Alan Cantle with the HPC subproject update. Alan?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Let me just switch gears here. If I share my main screen. Sorry. Not quite as organized as I wanted to be. Okay. Okay, can you see a blank Mac screen there?
Yes.
Okay, let me just run the presentation. Okay, this is a OCP HPC subproject update. So I think my last update, I said we split it into 3 phases. Really, we're getting quite deep into phase 1. We've had some attempt at the metrics and some discussion around that. I've been to a few HPC conferences and got some other metrics that are maybe more helpful to us. So I presented some of those. And we said it's hardware architecture related rather than silicon related, because that's the purview of the vendors to OCP in that sense. So what could we do in that front? And benchmarking against the top 500 would be where we would ultimately go. So that's what we've been busy with. I guess we're getting to a relatively interesting part. Yesterday, Jinshu Liu from FutureWay gave his individual thoughts on HPC, AI, and HPDA over the next 5 to 10 years. Very stimulating presentation. I haven't put the slides up yet, but I will do shortly. Sadly, we didn't get all the recording. My bad. But this was an interesting slide I thought he'd give you to whet your appetite. He's saying that he's seeing HBM maybe go up to 768 gigabytes and 10 terabytes per second over the coming years, and could we see CPUs with this sort of memory? So definitely a slide, a presentation worth taking a closer look at. The week before that, or the previous meeting before that, I was looking at some modular concepts that I've been playing with, so I presented that to the group. And it was really being inspired by the OAI efforts on OAM and obviously EDSFF coming out with all the common interconnect and modular media attach. And so I presented some of that. Essentially, what I was saying relates to the chiplet guys is we seem to live in this 19-inch rack world. And we're trying to innovate all the way down to chiplets, And this is fantastic if we can get it all working overnight, but surely there's a middle ground was the argument. So my presentation said that and said, could we reduce this and maybe go down from the 5 to 10 picojoules per bit to move around the server down to maybe more like 1 picojoule per bit. Okay, not as good as chiplets, but is there a middle ground which HPC could leverage? And so just taking those concepts, I took, for example, an FPGA in the OAM format, changed the interconnect to be the EDSF based, and then you can see that you can compose cables, storage, NIC 3.0 cards, OMI DDIMMs to configure your system as you need it, depend on the demands of your application. And that final one is just a mix of all of the technologies in one module. And then finally, oh, just a minute. Finally, we could put this together. This is 8 modules just filled with the OMI DDIMM example, mated to a cold plate with the FPGA mated to a cold plate. Could be any processor, obviously, with any connections on the back. And I've actually made it double-sided, so you've got one liquid-cooled cold plate. You're bringing the 54 volts in on this tremendous amounts of power, a kilowatt per module now. So you're efficiently bringing it in, but you're getting rid of the UBB motherboard. This would be pluggable into the OAI chassis. So this is a concept, and so we would turn the OAI accelerator box into a memory pool box. We could use the same chassis and provide memory pooling out of it. So this could be leveraged for all sorts of memory pooling, be it CXL, OpenCAPI, memory inception, those types of things. So that's the one idea there of where we can contribute. So interesting times. Thank you.
Hey, Alan, quick question on your slide number 2, please.
Slide number 2.
Yeah, I think you had first bullet phase 1 on testing and benchmark against top 500. So are you looking at ways to develop test concepts here and then define matrix as well? Because there is a parallel effort going on right now.
Yeah. Not at that level. It was saying so in terms of the benchmarking, obviously we were saying the benchmarking of any particular system is dependent on obviously the processors, and in a heterogeneous configuration that you could build with this type of architecture, it's all going to be dependent on that. But so we were, what benchmarks could we pull together? But yeah, it was really what are more generic measures that we could use to benchmark the actual physical architecture. It's such a complicated area when it comes to silicon, especially heterogeneous configurations. In a domain-specific architecture world, you build the machine specific to your application. So maybe I shouldn't have said the top 500. It's more of a generic benchmarking, but we're not really focusing on that. We're just saying what metrics make sense of we know we've done a good job at the hardware architecture level, if that makes sense.
Right. So my point was you can connect with that particular work stream to leverage their effort. It can help you. That's all I wanted to point out.
Yeah, DJ, if you could give me a link to that.
I will do that. I will do that. And Google and Facebook, these are the 2 organizations among others. I think Intel is also involved, and they, in fact, as we speak on this call right now, that particular call is going on in parallel every Wednesday, 8 to 9. I will put you in touch with the leagues on that, and perhaps they can help you with this effort so that there's no duplication and you can actually use their effort to scale your efforts. Thank you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good actually. I think we could use some help there, to be honest, in terms of how do we characterize this and how do you slice the pie in terms of benchmarking. Okay, thanks. Oops, let me stop sharing.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Anybody have any questions or any more questions or comments on the HPC subproject? All right. Next up, we have Gio talking about the OSP Foundation Incubation Committee. But before we do that, we have Elijah join us. She had a calendar issue where it wasn't on her calendar properly, but she's on the call now. So Elijah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning. This is Shaileja Maladi. I'm from Microsoft and I'm the Director of Program Management for Compute Development in Microsoft and Microsoft Azure hardware. And basically my team develops general purpose compute HPC and GPU products. And I'm very excited to work with Ja and John on being the server co-lead.
Yeah, thank you, Saraya, and welcome to the community.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you and welcome. Anybody else want to say hi or have any questions for Elijah? Well, that was a very quick, short and sweet introduction.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Actually, I did skip over the OSP GPU Enterprise Server 2021. I didn't see Alan on the call. Does anybody on the call have any status or updates on the OCP General Purpose Enterprise Server 2021 workstream? Okay. Yeah, I didn't think there would be on that one. Okay, so we'll get an update from Alan next time. Next up, we have Gia talking about the 2021 spec update template and the supplier requirements. Gia?
Everybody see the screen? Hello, I want to check if the screen sharing went through.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I want to take maybe a few minutes to boost the signal on this topic. So quite a few weeks ago, we started to share the 2021 spec template with this community, as you can see here, and we have been repeatedly communicating the link of the spec, the new spec, and which I think we are a little bit kind of delayed on making this official. So we really want to gather inputs from community and make iterations before making this a requirement. So there are a couple of efforts to make this easier. One is different. There are the OCP Foundation and 3 other OCP projects in open system firmware security and hardware management is creating a checklist to make the process easier. As you can see, there is a previewed checklist, while for the product contributor to check and select like how do they comply with the new criteria and the new spec template. And 2 weeks ago, we also hosted a dedicated 1-hour session inviting volunteer leads in these 3 areas to talk to a few contributors for like top contributors for product in the year 2020. So we really want to get the message out and hear from the community, how do you see the checklist, and how do you see your feasibility or challenge in adopting it? So to a third effort related to this, probably somewhere during the week, we are working on a survey, and we will be publishing the survey, targeting really understand the challenge and the suggestion in this template, or people see it's very easily adoptable, etc. Really just hear from this group of people. So please watch out for survey coming out in the mailing list during this week. Yeah, so I want to stop here and see if there are any general questions. right? If not, I will be working and on the survey and the release survey and passing it back to John.
Yeah, and one additional comment on the template. When the new template is requesting a lot of new information that we've always liked to have but haven't made very formal. In the template, there were also the different supplier requirements tabs that bring in other requirements for security and modularity and that kind of stuff. So definitely look at the different tabs of the templates and respond to the survey when it comes out, so we make sure we get a good understanding of the response from the community.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, John.
All right, well, moving right along. I thought that would be a longer discussion. Interproject communication. So the DCSCM was approved by the IC a couple months ago now, but I don't believe the 1.0 has been submitted. CMAC or anybody else, you have an update on DCSCM 1.0 and any update on the 2.0 activities? All right, looks like CMAC must be on mute or offline right now. So I know the 1.0 had a few changes that were that came in after the OCP IC approved the specifications. They were going back trying to decide if those were to minimize those changes and to get a 1.0 posted. I don't have a timeline in that. I thought it would already have happened by now. So I'm kind of surprised that 1.0 hasn't been submitted. The 2.0 work is being done under the hardware management module subgroup, so it's not part of server project, but we're definitely interested in it. So I want to keep discussing that every meeting, make sure everyone in the server project is aware of what's going on and has the ability to contribute over there at the hardware management module sub-project if they're interested in that.
So this is John. So I'm the IC rep to the hardware management project. So I keep a weekly poke at the SCM 1.0 guys to get the 1.0 done, because the IC approved 0.95, and then they decided they had these last minute changes. So I have an AR as soon as those changes are locked down to present it to the IC that these are the minor changes that have been done. And Microsoft has done and Google have done all the work to rally the industry to align to 1.0. So as soon as that's available, I will send mail to this mail list that's occurred.
Okay, yeah, definitely waiting on that, and don't understand why it's taken so long. So part of the internal surveys Gio was mentioning, the OCP redfish management profiles, we're adding more requirements in on those. And I think one of the realizations was that a lot of the people in the server project and other projects didn't really understand what those profiles were and how they worked. So John would like to come in today and talk about the usage guide for the main OCP profile and for the server profile. So John, if you want to go ahead and start presenting on that, I think it's time to do that.
Oh, that's a great segue. Could you give me a presentation access?
Yes, done.
Okay, so I've set to share two documents at this point. Okay, so first document is the process change. So do you see the slide set? Oh, you should. Okay. So
yes.
Okay, this is the problem that I've seen, and we've had profile documents floating around for quite a while. So in the trying to get all this stuff out of my way. Okay, got it. I like how WebEx throws these little pop-ups everywhere. Okay, so so what the server template, new server template talks about is aligning the manageability to Redfish, and the Redfish requirements are specified in a JSON file here in the lower right, and those are placed in the OCP profile GitHub. And unfortunately, or fortunately, all this stuff in the profile requires a lot of understanding of profile syntax, which I did not want this group or any group within OCP to actually understand. So in going through this process with OpenRMC, we tried to crank out snippets of the profile into a profile requirements document, which again required that you understand profile knowledge. So in the last 2 months or so, I've decided that in order to take the server profile up through the IC, that this group community need to approve this set of requirements. And the only way to do that was actually to create a document up here, which does not talk about syntax at all, has no syntax at all, and let the hardware management group worry about that stuff. And so the request will be for the user's guide to be approved by this, for the server profile to be approved by this community, and then taken up to the IC. So you guys will understand the profile necessary for dealing with servers. So the server profile is actually an extension of the baseline. So the baseline profile provides baseline functionality across all OCP platforms, and the server profile would be that which is above the actual baseline. So I'm not going to try so I just want to understand what the process is. And slide 2 shows the differences between the profile file, which is profile syntax in JSON, and then what will be in the user's guide. So all this defines what the requirement is for the model. What the user's guide tells you is for a specific task what you need to do. So in the user's guide, it would say if you want to reset the system, you just post. And this is the post that you have to have. The post requires a message. This is the content of the message, which basically informs it what type of reset to do. And the reset types are force off, on, or force restart. And so this is what you guys would approve on this side and allow this translation to occur by the subject matter experts in the hardware management group. Okay, any questions there? Okay, and then to that end, show the second document. Oh, huh. I guess I get to share my screen. There it is. Sorry, guys.
Having trouble getting the second file up?
I got it. I found it. Okay, so this is the user's guide for the server management profile. And I'm just going to review it so you guys have a context of how to look through this. So this is just the use cases of everything you want to do on a server. And then it's replicated here in this table, which is all the tasks you want to do on a computer system. There's another set for the manager and for the actual chassis which hosts this computer system. But this is the use case you will want to perform, and then what section that the description of that use case is actually done. So in general, you would want to get a list of all the systems, get the information on a particular system for each, and then within that system, you want to get its inventory data, get its asset tag, set it. If it's got a LED on it, you want to be able to get the location LED and then set it so you can find it if it's in a row somewhere. And so this is all listed out as to what you want to do on a general system. So if we want to add stuff or remove stuff, we can do it here. And then I would explain exactly what the use case would be to perform this. Okay. So in general, when we talked about this originally, we want the system firmware, we want a summary of the processors, the memory, the Ethernet interface, and you want to set the IP addresses. You want to set the boot information, and so you can do a reset and boot the system, and then you want to access the system log. And so if I go to boot systems, this actually tells you how to do a boot if you want to get the information on booting. And then if you want to set the boot order, so I noticed there were several ways of setting a boot order, so I want to add all of them, which is the set default boot order. If you want to set the to boot from a UEFI device, and this is a unique UEFI path. If you want to boot from a UEFI HTTP, which is off a network URI, you would specify that. And if you want to override it, boot just for one time, because you want to say, okay, this is default boot order, but for this one time, I want to boot diagnostic or something else, that you could actually set a boot override and be able to do that. So this I thought was a far easier way for this community to look at this and say, is this the functionality we want, or do we want more functionality for a baseline server? Any questions?
So this is a new document that basically has the same information in the previous one. It's just in a more readable format, or is this new documentation or new functionality?
This is it's the same functionality, but instead of having a bunch of profile syntax, I just placed it in a use case format. So you would know from a user and client standpoint, right, exactly what you have to issue across the Redfish interface to perform whatever task you want. So this community, you can focus on what manageability tasks you want to perform, and what types of information you want to see when you do a request and the information you want to provide. So a client can actually go look at this and say, fine, I want to do a boot override. What do I need to go do?
Okay. And the talk of this document clearly calls out what version of the main spec it's equivalent to.
Yes. So every time you do a profile update, we would update the usage guide. So they mate. So if you want, because one of the things I wanted to add to servers was firmware update, right, which is not in here yet. But if we would add firmware update, which everyone wants to do, whether it's BIOS or the BMC, then we would just add another section in here about how to do firmware update.
Okay. And is this guide going to be published on the Hardware Management Wiki, or where is it going to be published?
I would like the guide on the wiki, and I would like the community to approve the guide because it's readable and you can understand it, and then have that guide approved by the IC. And once that's approved, then the profile, which this calls out, the profile version would go live or go official on the GitHub for OCP profiles. Because right now there's a server profile out there, but it's never been quote approved by this group. And it's hard to have the template spec reference the server profile when that hasn't been approved by this group. So all this work has been done trying to get this community to understand enough about the Redfish interface to approve the profile.
Thank you, John. I would like to learn do you know if there's a good amount of server community or product contributors is developing this interface currently?
Yes. So what do you want to know? Well, we can't tell you how many people, unless because the DMTF doesn't talk about that, about implementation. We know that we've had implementation since 2015.
Oh, good to know. Yeah, I think I would like to confirm basically the existence of a developer, and in this case, I think some of the future contribution through server project would benefit from this. Yeah.
Okay, so I can post the membership of the Redfish Forum, which is public knowledge, and that will tell you who are the participants and who are the promoters of Redfish.
Yeah, and related to this, my understanding this is also part of the requirement for future any of the future OCP server product contribution as part of the 2021 criteria, new criteria. Is that the right understanding?
Correct.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I see. Yeah, this is helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Right, that's why I wanted to make all this official, right? The official release so people understand that the server profile has been officially approved by this community.
Right. What version of the Redfish spec are these profiles based on?
Early 2020.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that I have a comment that these were based on like 1.2 when they were at 1.9 back in 2020. So I'm not sure what they're at now. So we probably need to call out what the minimum required is, and then make sure that all of our specs are still compatible and compliant with the latest version.
Right. As a matter of fact, there was a bug filed against the server profile that they've what they did do. They deprecated location LED to location indicator enabled, and someone was running the OCP profile server profile and said, I fixed it to align with the new model, and this server profile is now failing. So can you fix the profile so I can do either? So that's in the works. So yes, I'm tracking that information. Two, there's a mechanism to get that stuff fixed.
Right. I just think as we start trying to make this an official and make it required, the fact that DMTF is changing the Redfish base level spec regularly, we need to really clearly call out how we're following that and what revisions are acceptable.
Correct.
So is that in the document here about what Redfish base level spec we're following and what's the minimum acceptable?
It will be. It will be. Right now, there's a OCP or conformance test guidance from DMTF, which is being relayed to the hardware management group, because there are a set of tests that DMTF has already written, and I think I showed it in the original slide that I had. Was this profile was read by an interop validator. That interop validator dumps out a results file. So all that's being sent to the hardware management project. And as soon as the hardware management project okays it, then that will determine the Redfish interface protocol revisions.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we document it instead of having people try and figure that out.
Right. That's why I have to have it officially agreed by the hardware management project.
Yeah, and I think any agreement from the server project is going to be, yeah, that looks good because I don't really understand it, but it looks okay, versus I truly understand what I'm agreeing to here with all these different revisions of different profiles flying around.
I understand.
So there's some risk there. You know, we might approve something that we don't fully understand. Need the management project to cover us on that.
Right. So I want to make sure that they are able to take when it gets a hardware management project, they can go to the community and say, run this, and make sure it runs. A part of it is that the DMTF has a interoperability lab. So members of the reference forum send it to the interoperability lab, and the test suites that I enumerate are run every 2 months. And that's to verify that there's interoperability across the systems in the lab, and determine whether there is different interpretations of the same spec wording by two different vendors. And if so, then we need to go fix the spec because it can be interpreted multiple ways.
Okay. So if the community has questions or comments on these documents, how's the best way for them to get that feedback to you?
I've opened this document up with comments available, open. So with the path that I placed in the, that's sent out in the chat, and once you put it on the wiki, they can comment directly onto it.
Okay. The rest of the community out there has been pretty quiet. What does everyone think about these documents?
I find you get very little feedback until you get people to run through this, and then they look at the details. So.
Yeah, I've got a pretty quiet community out here. I was trying to get somebody else to talk up other than the 3 or 4 who do all the talking. Okay. Well, thank you, John, for that presentation. We'll look through it and see if we have any feedback.
Okay, thank you.
For interproject communication, is there anybody from Rack and Power on that has any status, or from the cooling subgroups or subprojects? All right. Well, if not, that's all I have on the agenda for today. Nobody has anything else. I'll go ahead and close the call a few minutes early.
Thank you, John, for hosting.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll talk next month.